Hi everyone and welcome to episode 28 of Ionan's Edge. Today's review is on the Hogue SIG K320. So some basic specs on the knife. The knife uses a black coated S30V drop point high flat grind blade. It has a beautiful little swedge on the front top edge of the blade here. It has a usable cutting edge of 3 inches. It uses Hogue's polymolded textured scales over a partial stainless steel frame liners that come back to about here, about a little over 50, maybe 60% of the scale length. The scale length itself is 4.5 inches. And this is a manually operated knife. It uses both a nice blade cutout here, and it also uses Hogue's Able Lock, which is basically similar to Benchmade's Access Lock. The overall tip to tail length of this knife is 8 inches on the button. The weight of the knife on my digital scale is 4 ounces, so pretty light. And also a couple things to note, the knife does come with a Hogue zippered nylon case. It is embroidered with SIG because that's who they make this knife for. And also this knife does come in some other configurations. So it comes in a couple different colors, including like a desert tan / FDE. It also comes with a tanto blade instead of a drop point. And it does come in a fully automatic version, which I have held and used, and that sucker deploys like crazy. It will jump right out of your hand if you're not holding on to it. But this is the manual version of that knife. So what I like about the knife, listen, I've owned this knife for a good while now. I've carried this knife plenty, and I'm pretty impressed overall with it. One of the things I hear a lot when people talk about the K320 is they say it's really tactical looking. And here's the thing, folks. It's a SIG Sauer branded knife, and it is the K320. It is the companion to SIG Sauer's P320 series of pistols, which I actually own. If I put this knife down next to any one of my P320s in black, the coloring and texturing, including the nitron looking finish on the blade, is spot on a match. So that's what this is supposed to be. It's made for SIG to be a companion to the P320, hence the name K for knife 320. So in that respect, yes, it is a tactical knife because it's made to be the companion to SIG's pistols. But let's look past that. Let's look beyond that. If you go past that, you'll find an impeccably built knife by Hogue that has, in my opinion, the best ergos of possibly any knife I have ever held. You didn't hear me wrong there. The ergos on this knife are fantastic. So the balance point on this knife is literally right here behind the pivot, right about where the access lock cuts through the knife. So balance-wise, the knife feels perfect in your hand, just sits there just like that. Boom, perfect. You've got 2 good hand positions. Even if you have bigger hands, I wear large glove size, but I can hold this knife with a little bit sticking off the back in the hammer or the saber position. The way that they cut this and just kept this relief here going all the way up to where the blade jimping is, which is all this jimping is very meaningful, is great. So if you're in the backhand position, you've got meaningful jimping there. You've got all this beautiful texturing on the palm swell on both sides, and you've got a place to put your hand. They give you a full-size choil with this little bump up here to protect. It's both dual purpose. You can use it as sort of a sharpening stop, and then also you can't really get your hand anywhere near that sharp edge of that blade because they put this little bump here, this little rise, but you get a full-size finger trail. Even if I cut way back here, all the way to the back of my hand, like, you still cannot get your finger close to that blade. So if you got big hands and you need to hold it in this forward position because your mitts are really big, like somebody like my pal Satu Dave, right? You can still get your hands on this knife, and there's still jimping here to touch right there. So the knife just, no matter how you hold this knife, it feels great in your hand. The ergos on this knife are outstanding. So if you've never held one of these, you've never owned one of these, maybe you should take a look. Okay, so let's move on. We talked about ergos and balance, which is great, but let's talk about how the knife has actually functioned for me. First of all, I have mowed through, I don't know how many yards and yards and yards of cardboard. I order a lot of stuff. I'm always cutting cardboard boxes up here. This knife has hacked through a ton of it. It's held up fantastic. I would say the heat treat on this S30B is probably really good because I have not had to re-edge this knife. All I had to do is mostly strop it. I did kind of touch up one little part of the blade there where I kind of pushed through a box and hit a metal staple, but that's gone. You can't tell that at all. Obviously, if you whack one of these blades against something that's sharp and made out of steel, there's a possibility that you could nick a blade, but that's it. Other than that, and it was very, very tiny. It wasn't like I chipped it. It was just when you held it up on edge here, you could see a little shiny spot right there in the front where I cut into a piece of steel. But other than that, this knife is held up great. I mean, even the finish that they put on this looks good. What I usually do when I'm finished with this, it gets kind of a grayish brown look from cutting through a lot of cardboard. I'll just take a couple drops of Rem oil, put it on my finger, and rub the blade out on both sides and wipe it off, and it once again looks like this. So this coating has held up exceptionally well to a lot of cutting. So edge retention, good. Blade coating, very, very good. And again, you can't really see any problems with the handle or anything like that. So again, performance-wise, it gets a thumbs up, and ergonomically, again, possibly one of the best knives ergonomically and most comfortable knives I've ever held in my hand. Love that it's balanced very well. Perfect. Hogue gets a big thumbs up for that too. So on top of those things, besides the almost perfect balance, good ergos, and good blade and performance and edge retention, it has a 4-position pocket clip, which is really nice, okay? And it can be put tip up, tip down, left side or right side for you lefties. Also, obviously American made. They smoothed out the bottom, and then they did this other cool thing. There's a little thumb relief here. And so what that's for is that when the knife is in your pocket like this in a right-hand carry, right, which is the most common for most people. They didn't make this part lefty. But you're going to reach in and you're going to just feel that spot with your thumb. And what that is it's right across from the pocket clip. So when you reach in your pocket, as soon as you feel your thumb in that position, all you have to do is pull and the knife comes right out. It's a really cool little extra design feature. When I first took it out of the box, I thought somebody melted my grip. There's a thumbprint in it, but it's actually, they're all like that, and it's made to be like that so that it puts you right here where you draw the knife out of your pocket. So again, just a nice little design touch by Hogue. So are there any issues with the knife? Have I had any issues with the K320 SIG Sauer from Hogue? The only issue I had, which isn't really an issue, is the action was kind of stiff when the knife was brand new. I did put some oil in the pivot, and I did put a tiny drop of oil here on both sides of the access lock. But honestly, once the knife got broken in properly, I mean, this thing it's fantastic. This is not a super fidgety knife. This is a work knife. This is a knife you could take out hiking with you. It's got the access lock, so obviously you can just, flick it open and flick it closed if you want, and it will do that. And I love the little extra addition on Hogue's access lock of how you get back to here and it just locks right in place. So I think I might like that better than the original, Able lock. I might like that better than the original Benchmade access lock in a lot of ways. So there we go. So otherwise, no issues with this knife, no problems with the blade, there's no blade wiggle, there's no movement. This knife is rock solid in every single way. So then finally, comparisons. Let's do a couple of those really quick. So I wondered why this knife felt so familiar to me when I first put it in my pocket, and that's probably because it's just like a knife I carried for years. This is the Kershaw Knockout. And take a look at these two knives next to each other. it's amazing how similar these knives are in blade shape and in general ergonomics, right? Boom. There we go. So very similar. It gives you an idea size-wise too. It's a pretty popular knife, pivot to pivot. There we go. And then I'll put something else in there that everybody probably knows. This is a Demco 80 20.5. And that one pivot to pivot. So it's not an exceptionally big or long knife. Definitely more handle width and definitely a little bit more blade mass, but not necessarily cutting area. So there's our comparisons. So my summary. So this knife is in around the $140 range, depending on where you get it. $145, somewhere in that vicinity, I think it is. It's a good value, and it has stellar ergos, a good build, and all the fit and finish on the knife is excellent. So I can highly recommend the Hogue SIG Sauer K320 to just about anybody out there that is looking for a knife like this. It's definitely a good buy and is definitely held up well. I highly recommend this knife. So that's all I got today for this one, folks. As always, if you've enjoyed the videos and the reviews, please hit the like button for me. Leave me a comment. I always like hearing from you folks, even if it's good or bad. And as always, please consider subscribing to my channel for future reviews and notifications. Thanks as always, folks, for watching, and have a great day. Stay sharp.